Welcome to the AirCon Vault. Here you can find the recordings of the live streams from AirCon's audio conference. These are made free thanks to our sponsors: Sound Effects, Aftertouch Audio, Boom Library, Fmod, Game Audio Learning, Game Sound Con, Kiloheart, Revroom, Soundcut, Strata from Audio Kinetic, and AirCon, the online home for audio people. We hope you enjoy the video.
Welcome everybody to my talk, Creative on Demand. I'm Jon Kelliher, a freelance sound designer and game developer currently working at Feel Free Games on a game called Luma Island. And we've actually got, we've done an announcement at Wholesome Direct, and we've got some content coming out on Friday. Well, not this Friday, next Friday. So please keep an eye out for that. Now, I want to start by coming clean that this talk is actually a little bit of a clickbaity way to lure you into a somewhat nebulous topic. Greg Lewis and I were workshopping the idea, and we were kind of like, well, it's hard to put, I don't know, like a big encompassing title for this. So we're going to go with Creative on Demand. But specifically, we're going to cover a range of topics to do with authenticity, well-being, and creativity as a way to be more sustainable in your career or your hobby, and as such, have more creativity at your fingertips, or rather, be creative on demand. So I'm continuing a tradition of talks that aren't specifically about audio. But since we're all mostly audio creatives here, this talk is going to be done through the lens of creative audio work, mostly in the game sector, since that's where my experience lies. But I want to reiterate that it will still all be very applicable to those of you who are not in games or even audio for that matter. So there's something to take away from this, even if you're a professional crocheter or something like that. I'm going to check the chat and make sure that, that this is still going on and people can see me and the chat's still here. I'm on my phone internet. So yeah, let's hope it all goes smoothly. Now, there have been a bunch of great talks that I've seen this year at AirCon25. And some of these themes have actually come up quite a lot. The themes of authenticity and well-being and, what is being creative and stuff like that. So I hope that this talk can help those of you who these topics really resonate with. I highly suggest checking out David Fairfield's talk, Building Your Ideal Career, a 5-step guide, the Venus Theory Q&A with Cameron and Greg, and the Goblins of Game audio panel that I did with a bunch of my fellow goblins that I really enjoyed. We've also got good old Bob Ross here with his big old palette. He's here to put you at ease and just get you in the right mindset. So again, I'm going to check the chat, make sure that nothing's exploded. We're all good. So let's start off with a question. Who is your authentic self? Now, I love this moment in Zoolander where he's like looking in the puddle and he's like, who am I? I don't know. But yeah, like this is kind of the big question that I guess a lot of us will have asked ourselves at some point. If not, you should. Now, the definition of authentic is of undisputed origin and not a copy, otherwise genuine. And to me, what your authentic self means being true to yourself, being true to your wants and needs, being honest with yourself, and hopefully being honest with others around you. What it doesn't mean is being your best self at all times. Definitely doesn't mean people pleasing, by which I mean doing certain things to elicit a kind of response that makes people, see you in a better light or whatever. It doesn't mean acting how you want to be perceived, although it could be if that aligns with your authentic self, but it doesn't mean that if you're doing that against your authentic self, that this is you being authentic. And finally, acting how society expects you to. We all know the social media performance of, putting ourselves out there or, walking on the street and kind of doing things weird, or not doing things weirdly because society tells you that's stupid. A perfect example of this is my partner and I really enjoy like playing in like bigger playgrounds if we're able to not break the swings and stuff like that. But we really enjoy playing in playgrounds because why shouldn't adults be allowed to play? And I don't think that society really encourages that enough. So I'm going to check the chat again. Hello, Gina. Hello, Lewis. Right. Okay. So, with those definitions and questions in your mind, I want to talk about your direction and how you pursue your goals. Now, something that I've noticed relatively recently is that people, especially graduates or entry level folk, they want to prove that they can do everything. Now, this also applies to some experienced folk too. And I fully encourage being a generalist. I mean, heck, I'm a generalist too. I even have a whole AirCon talk about it from a couple of years ago. It's absolutely important to learn what you like as much as it is knowing what you don't like and what you don't want to do. It's also valuable to be flexible and have a T-shaped skill set, especially to make ends meet and ensure sustainability in your career or to get your career like off the ground. But it is easy to lose sight of where you're going and spread yourself thin trying to do what you think other people want you to do rather than doing what it is that you like to be doing or what you want to be doing. So the questions that I regularly get asked are, what are people looking for when they're hiring? How should I present myself? And what footage should I use in my showreel? And all of these are absolutely valid questions. But what I'm getting at is the questions that I never really get asked are, how do I get to work on my dream projects? How can I make a living doing what I love? And how can I do what I love without burning out? I bet that one hits hard for some people. It feels like, in general, people have already resigned themselves to it not being possible from the start. And sure, it might not be yet. Like, you might not score your first project won't be scoring some soundtrack to a Pixar film. But, you can make steps in that direction without having to fully compromise who you are. And it definitely won't be possible from the start if you're letting other people's paths and expectations pave your own journey, as every journey is unique and methodologies that work for some people may not be applicable or even reproducible by others. It's easy to be swayed and misguided by the cacophony of information and opinions that you should be doing this, or this is what success means. But success for one person could differ drastically from your own ideas of success. So there seems to be this fundamental step here that's missing, that people want to jump straight to making money in audio, film, games, and they immediately ditch this idea of what their dreams or ideal scenario would be. Now, this isn't to say that it's not okay to do this, but I'm talking about authenticity here. If you wanted to earn money and you were willing to grind to get there, you would have likely taken a more direct route, becoming a lawyer, an accountant, or whatever fast tracks you to like min-max your money and your misery. So the entertainment industry can also be quite grueling. Like, it can be a grueling place to work in, and some unfortunately common situations can lead to not only not achieving your dream goals, but also crunching, redundancy, and in the worst cases, abuse. So if you're not enjoying the work that you're doing and you're spreading your time and skills out thin just because you want to work in this industry because people have told you that that's valuable and respectable, it's definitely worth asking yourself what you're really getting out of this. Are you willing to make a living in these industries at the cost of your own well-being and by compromising your core values? It's not to say you won't ever have to make sacrifices or have hard days, of course. And I'm definitely not here trying to discourage you and say that these industries don't want or need you. But I'm asking you to consider why you're here. Why do you do what you do? What drove you to do this in the first place? And what do you hope to get out of this? And by asking yourself these questions, you may come a little bit closer to building a healthier and more authentic understanding of your relationship with your creative field. Now, we've got good old Bob Ross here with his first little bit of wisdom, saying, find freedom on this canvas. And I definitely feel that freedom comes from pursuing your interests and your passions. So thank you, Bob. I'm going to check the chat again just to make sure that nothing has exploded. Cool. 4 journeys. Yes, Lewis, I enjoyed making these slides a lot. Cool. I'm going to continue. Nothing has exploded yet. Now, authenticity in your journey. I found these pictures when I was looking up authenticity, just like shooting in the dark. trying to look up authenticity, and I came across this page of how to discern whether Pokemon cards are fake. And these two images came up, and I just absolutely love the fact that they had to outline the parts that were clearly not real, especially this random little square here, as if you weren't distracted by the huge knockoff Pokemon. Anyway, here's another question for you. There are going to be a lot of questions. What do you have to offer that is unique to you? In other words, what do you have to offer that helps you to stand out from the rest of the crowd? Now, it's fair to say that with the current state of the games industry, or any creative industry for that matter, they all seem to be exploding, that there's too much supply and not enough demand, especially with industry-wide layoffs and company closures, etc. We're not even going to talk about generative AI because that's another conversation and we don't want to be depressed. If your interests aren't in what you're doing, then your work could likely suffer and definitely not be the best of what you have to offer, both in your work and just as a human offering, stuff. But especially if you're trying to latch on to trends and make things that you think people want, but you've got no real interest in yourself. Like, I know this has happened to me in the past, where I was creating content that I thought would get me hired, or let's be honest, become rich and famous, or whatever society views it as success. And even though it kind of worked, here I am, I've got to where I am. There was a lack of fulfillment and this lack of authenticity that's caused this big shift in my thinking about my career and how I present myself as a professional in the games industry, but also as a creative. Now, I want to chat briefly about a sound designer that you may or may not know. This is Noah Citrin. You might recognize his thumbnails from YouTube. And he's made a name for himself through his work and by creating content online that shows his unique style and workflows. Now, someone like Noah already exists, and he's going to be better at doing what he does than you ever will be. Why would you want to be doing exactly what he's doing anyway? Like, you're only ever going to be chasing trends, or you're only going to be chasing him because he's going to continue doing whatever is authentic to him, rather than you just trying to copy stuff, like copy his exact workflow or copy his exact Reaper theme or whatever. Now, he excels because he's being authentic to what inspires him, what he finds interesting, and most importantly, what he enjoys. Be it warbly sound design, making sci-fi guns, or creating educational content and teaching people about his craft. So I encourage you to ask yourself, what inspires you? What do you find interesting? And what do you enjoy? Sorry, spoilers. Answering these questions can help you to pave your own journey and build your own career in a way that is more aligned with your authentic self and tastes. And practicing what you enjoy and what really excites you tends to lead to better results anyway. But more importantly, it's easier to enjoy what you're doing when things are tough. Without asking these questions, however, you could end up in a situation where you spend 2 years editing and implementing indigenous bird sounds in a game like Red Dead Redemption 2, and come out of that experience wondering why nobody will hire you to do anything but bird sounds, despite you never wanting to hear bird sounds again. Though, unfortunately for you, in this hypothetical scenario, there are bird sounds everywhere, and that sucks. Now, this is a story that I heard about someone a couple of years ago that may or may not be true. But whether it is or not, it acts as a parable. And my point is that it's easy to get stuck in a place that on paper matches the criteria of what you want to be doing. In other words, you're getting paid to make sounds on a popular franchise. But the work itself and what you're hoping to achieve afterwards might not be what you were hoping for. Maybe you were hoping to, I don't know, make guns on Destiny like Noah. And or you really enjoy Foley, and you want to be making, I don't know, UI sounds or whatever. But getting stuck in this area may make it difficult for you to come out and then try to get a job as a generalist sound designer rather than a specialist who's just specialized in birds and ambiences. And I've seen this happen a lot. I've seen a lot of people who are, for example, dialogue editors applying for roles that are generalist roles in indie studios. And they end up not getting the job because they haven't been spending time outside of that, pursuing a lot of these other, things that will prove to people like myself hiring that they're capable of doing more. They're kind of just riding on the idea that they've worked on a big franchise and that's enough. Unfortunately, in this day and age, like I said, there's a lot of demand. No, not a lot of demand. A lot of supply and not a lot of demand. But you may, on the other hand, freaking love working on bird sounds. And this is your dream gig to work on the bird sounds of Red Dead Redemption 2. In which case, hell yeah, dude. There's a field recordist and sound designer called Andy Martin over on the Field Recording Slack, who is such a person, and he's earned his name of the Birdspert or Bird Expert. I love that. And the point of this whole story is that there's no shame for people who, have passions in this, like that are this niche. Nor is there shame for people who get stuck in a niche that they don't enjoy. It's very easy to do, especially when you're trying to make ends meet, or you're feeling a bit directionless and you don't really know where to go. But instead, I want to encourage and inspire you to try to do more of what you actually enjoy and want to be doing. Now, of course, it's not to say that you won't ever struggle or have to work on other things that you don't enjoy. But why not spend more time putting effort into putting your authentic self forward so that people eventually know you for being the person who loves birds and wants to hire you for exactly that. Now, your tastes may also change as you progress in your craft and in your life. So it's also important to stop and self-reflect every once in a while and reevaluate your wants and needs and your dreams and your goals as well. I personally wanted to be a touring musician when I was 18. And by the time I was out of uni, I realized that that wasn't really the life for me. I wasn't a man on the road. That wasn't my lifestyle. And instead, I pivoted and wanted to become a film and animation composer. And here we are 10 years later. I'm a full-time game developer and I'm doing most of the things that I want to be doing at this point in time. Of course, there are more things that I want to do in the future, but who even knows what 10 years time from now actually holds? Who knows what I'll be doing, and who knows what you'll be doing? We just don't know. But if we're taking active steps in a direction roughly of where we want to be going, you can only hope that we'll end up in a position where we're actually really happy and we're being authentic and we really enjoy our day to day, even if it's tough. So I'm going to check the chat again and see if people loving Noah, and I'm loving all the Pokemon stuff. Nice. All right. So let's talk about your artistic voice, otherwise known as your sound or your aesthetic or your identity. Got a bit more wisdom here from Bob. He says, talent is a pursued interest. In other words, anything that you're willing to practice, you can do. Now, I've spent a lot of time looking for my voice and trying to analyze what makes it unique and valuable. In fact, this was the topic of my thesis at university, and it led to some very interesting discoveries that, surprisingly, didn't really help as much as you might think, certainly not in the long run. I then stopped to ask myself, why am I doing this? Like, what purpose does this fulfill? And ultimately, I think it was to find a shortcut, to find the formula that makes me sound like me. However, in finding this formula, I would have likely just become derivative of myself and either rapidly lost passion for my craft, or worse yet, just pigeonholed myself and become stuck in this inescapable pit of creating content I no longer enjoyed. And all you need to do is look at any YouTuber or content creator with the pressures of creating engaging content that pleases their fans, their overlords. Now, it's easy enough for them to find a formula. Within reason, it's easy enough, but they found a formula. But it isn't long before the pressure of making content, not for yourself, but for others, or for money, or for popularity, leads to inevitable burnout. Now, this is a quote from a YouTuber that I watch, Zach Heidi. And he said this following a recent shift in his work due to burnout and disillusion. And he says, your artistic voice is the unfiltered expression of the sum of your observations, experiences, and perspectives. Instead of developing your voice, develop your life, and your art will become original effortlessly. Now, he's recently had this big revelation that he was stuck in an unhealthy creative spiral and has since shifted his output to be more in line with his passions. And the results in terms of engagement with his videos and his content, work opportunities that are coming his way, and most importantly, the fulfillment that he feels speaks wonders for this approach. Now, this isn't to say, sorry, skipping ahead. This isn't to say that you should spend less time practicing and honing your craft and then suddenly you'll become Philip Glass. It's more to say that you need to find a balance and actually live your life outside of just your profession or your hobbies, and live a more holistically well-rounded life so that you have something to actually feed into your craft rather than just regurgitating the same old stuff over and over again until the end of time or you burn out. And when analyzing the work of countless artists and musicians who've stood the test of time long past their deaths, there is this common theme of discovery or reinventing themselves. And in pursuing these life experiences, being curious and ultimately playing, they evolve their voice to create entirely new and original creations. I should definitely note, however, that this isn't me revealing the secret of being eternally happy. In fact, a lot of these artists are and were tortured by the pressure of never wanting to go stale or be derivative. I think a lot of you can empathize with this, is that being a creative is unfortunately kind of a burden as well as a gift. But the point remains that finding your voice seems to be about living, growing, and evolving, not stagnating, chasing trends, or plagiarizing others. And simply by living your life, being curious, and following your passions and interests, your voice will naturally evolve. I personally also feel now that it's better left up to others to decide what your voice actually is, since it's far easier to notice these things from the outside than in this, just whirlwind of all the self-doubt and other stuff that our brain so enjoys to treat us to. So I'm going to check the chat again before we move on to the next section. Someone's asking for a volume adjuster. If it's very quiet, please say so. In which case, I mean, actually, I've got a Reaper session going here. Oh, it is a bit quiet. I'm sorry about that. I'm going to turn it up a little bit. Okay. All right, cool. Just waiting for a couple of people to write things in the chat, and hopefully... Okay, someone says it sounds fine. Nice. Yeah, okay, well, Lewis can enjoy these small waveforms. I just don't want to clip. So anyway, you have probably heard this quote, and I want to sort of like follow on from this idea of developing your artistic voice and your authentic self. So this quote is, "Good artists copy and great artists steal." Supposedly it's by Pablo Picasso, but I looked into it and it's actually quite dubious. But regardless, another quote that I almost prefer is, "When you steal from one author or source, it's plagiarism. If you steal from many, it's research," by Wilson Misner. Now, what these quotes are trying to say is that selectively, or in fact, they are saying this, they're saying that selectively picking and stealing the things that you like from many sources gives you the tools to create your own unique palette. And this palette then allows you to create new and interesting works that build on your influences and the things that genuinely excite you and are authentic to your own tastes. This also becomes our vocabulary that we can fall back on, especially when we're creatively blocked or facing tight deadlines. I mean, look at any famous jazz musician and how they studied all of their favorite players. They learned from them by copying and stealing licks and runs and chord changes, and then combine them to become the vocabulary that they use when they're improvising in the moment or composing. And arguably, very little of what is improvised is truly original, as probably it was practiced or learned in some shape or form previously. But it leans on the life experiences and the things that they've heard or seen somewhere else, but they're just putting it in a new context in real time. Now, I highly recommend reading Austin Kleon's book, Steal Like an Artist, as it contains far more gold than this talk has time for, and it discusses this topic and many more in much greater depth. Moving on, in fact, just gonna check out. OpenAI will still steal this quote in no time. Oh no, yeah, no, all the quotes are gone. I love that everyone's just quoting me for this. Cool. All right. Filling up your creative tank. So creating things can be fun and rewarding, but it can also be exhausting and draining as well. So let's talk about your creative tank and how you can fill it. Now, something that I've learned to do recently is to have a positive or net zero creative input and output. This means reading, playing games, spending time with loved ones, sharing stories, spending time in nature and observing the world, and so on and so forth. Taking the time to do this allows me to fill up my creative tank and not only keep me topped up energetically, but also feed into my creativity and evolve my creative voice and practice being authentic to my own tastes and desires. As I said before, it's as important to know what you dislike as it is to know what you like. And the only way you can truly find that out is by being curious and trying new things. So, something else that I've also adopted is this mentality of this quote by Mae West: I'll try anything once, twice if I like it, three times to make sure. And the benefit of this is that you might not be in the right headspace to truly accept or digest something the first time that you encounter it. I mean, how many times have you tried to get into a band or a film or a series that everybody's like really into, but you just don't get it? And you've tried multiple times until one day it just finally clicks and you're in the right headspace to understand what everybody's talking about. So, keeping an open mind the next time you try something may lead to finding a new interest or passion, flavor, emotion, or ultimately a new tool for your belt that you can use in the future on your future projects and your creative work. Some extra life wisdom for you is that experiencing many new and novel experiences helps improve memory and mindfulness. And it's definitely always worth aiming to be present and grateful in anything that you're doing to truly reap the rewards and learn something new from these experiences. As they say, if you fail, fail upwards. Check the chat again. Lewis, don't promote heroin on our chat, please. Right. So, putting your authentic self out there, this is kind of the next step. So, being creative and authentic is one thing, but putting yourself out there can be hella intimidating, especially when you're being vulnerable and exposing yourself to criticism. But when your values are solid and when you're being true to yourself, what other people think and say shouldn't matter as much, and certainly shouldn't waver your passion for doing what you love. Like, who are they to tell you what you love doing? Airwiggles and LinkedIn are really good places to share your work. I personally, these are my poisons, but I feel like some people might see them as being overly positive, but I think that there's enough negativity in the world. And in the worst case, most of the time, people will only not comment on your posts if they're not super into it. But in the best case, loads of people tell you how amazing it is what you're doing and how much you're inspiring them. And that's fantastic. So I really encourage you to use these places. We won't even talk about Twitter and the hellscape that is/was. So there are plenty of talks and articles that discuss how best to do this effectively. Lewis Thompson recently just released his talk that he did at Game SoundCon last year about effectively using social media and marketing yourself. So I'm not going to go into that, but I highly recommend checking that out. Now, when putting yourself out there and wondering how you want the world to perceive you, go back and ask yourself these questions. What inspires you? What do you find interesting, and what do you enjoy? Sorry, I forgot that I added these emojis and they're cracking me up. Now, you shouldn't put everything out there, and you certainly shouldn't feel the pressure that you have to put anything out there with any sort of regularity. And definitely don't compare yourself to all the people who do this professionally, or as a very involved hobby, like a lot of YouTubers or TikTokers are. But by sharing your work and your passions, it will help you to connect with other people who share your interests and enable you to join or even create a community where you're valued for being authentic rather than a false version of yourself who's just trying to please other people. People will smell it a mile away as well if that's what you're trying to do. But if you're sharing these things that are authentic to you and that you're authentically passionate about, people will find you. So Nathan Moody, our resident guru on Airwiggles, he's shared this brilliant advice on this topic. If you're a freak, be a freak and find your fellow freaks to work with. Seriously, life's too short to do much else. Do you and you'll find your tribe. And I couldn't agree more. Whether it's here on Airwiggles, or at games events like Develop Brighton, GDC, or Amaze Berlin, I can truly attest to that being a freak or my authentic self has led to some of the best experiences and friendships in my life. And ultimately, I've found a community, or rather communities, of other freaks with which I can be freaky together. And that includes all of you. So uh, welcome to the club, or I guess we've been in the club together for a while. So, it's nice to be here. But in addition, when people know you for being the person who enjoys doing something specific, or you're an expert in a certain field, that's especially if it's niche, they're going to be the people who are knocking on your door, since you may likely be the first person that they can think of when they're looking for somebody with those exact skills, or that matches those passions. So here's another quote that's specifically related to game sound design, but I think it's still transferable if you remove the game part. Jeff Carpenter said on LinkedIn recently, looking for a game job at your dream company? Here's a tip. Sound redesign a gameplay clip of the exact game you want to work on. Also, knock it out the park. Then post on the socials. I can't think of a better way to get the attention of the sound team on that game. This doesn't necessarily mean that by doing this, you're definitely going to land your dream job at your dream company and, but what it does mean is that you're going to be putting yourself out there as somebody who is able to and enjoys creating content in that style that aligns with your own tastes or your passions, and you enjoy these kind of games. And instead, it could lead to working on similar projects, getting hired for similar things, or down the line, working on bigger and better projects than you even imagined. So, another question, why are you redesigning Call of Duty or God of War redesign clips when what you really want to be working on are games like Tiny Glade or Dredge? I'm talking to you, but I'm also kind of talking to myself. And for those of you who aren't in sound design or games, I urge you to share music or animations or artwork or your crochet patterns, whatever it is that you do that is authentic to you and your passions and your values. And trust me, it does work. I've seen it happening quite a lot recently. Over on LinkedIn, for example, Chris Bolt and Anthony Turi, who are resident air wigglers, I've seen them landing their dream gigs at highly revered game companies like Sucker Punch and Blizzard, respectively. And I'm pretty sure I just saw Jess Wallace got a contract at Blizzard as well. So congrats, Jess. I too have been seeing the positive benefits of putting this into practice by rebranding the content that I produce to be more in line with my own authentic self and creative voice. And as such, I have been miraculously getting more attention and job offers for working on games that I would actually really like to be working on. And for those of you who are curious, my sort of branding now is like vibrant and wholesome games that promote positive values. That's kind of where I want to be and what I want to be putting out into the world. So, gonna take a little break. People love Dredge. I absolutely love Dredge. People are loving crochet. If you're not into crochet, do it. A freak, a goblin, a sound designer. What's the difference at this point? Man, Daniel, I do not know, but the Venn diagram is basically a circle. Cool. Yeah, so many cool people. There are too many cool people to actually reference, but I'm just name dropping. There. Okay. I see your question, Lewis Ball. Yeah, if someone could put Lewis's question into the Q&A for the end, then that would be fantastic. So, right, gonna have a drink of water because yeah, we're not too far from the end now. Right. So this kind of final passage is a palate cleanser about kindness and empathy. And I've kind of wanted to do this for quite a while, but I've never really found the right platform for doing it. And I feel like this talk is probably the right place. You all seem like very wholesome people who I might be preaching to the choir a little bit, but I do feel like there is stuff to take away from this for everybody. And so something I feel that isn't talked enough about is the value of kindness and empathy. And before you run away or lose interest, that isn't me preaching about some new ideology or religion or cult or whatever. But we've talked a lot about ourselves. our authentic selves, our creativity, our artistic voices, and how we put ourselves out there. Now, the benefit of kindness and empathy ultimately aren't for you, but instead they're for others, so that everybody in our teams, our communities, our companies, or our industry as a whole can feel welcome and thrive in a safe and caring environment. Now, if everybody, or at least the vast majority of people, practice kindness and empathy, then we could all thrive, or at the very least, support one another through the highs and the lows. Now, counter to my previous statement, there is a benefit for you for doing this, in that if everybody is supportive, including yourself, then everybody can get to benefit from a much nicer community and social space as well. You get to be a part of that. But again, this shouldn't be your primary motivation for this, like being nice for your own personal gain. It has a bad ring to it. We're doing this for other people. And I think that individualism is one of the major factors of what fuels the corruption and exploitation that's plaguing the world at the moment. But my personal method for fighting this on a day-to-day basis is to lead by example and inspire people around me with positive virtues and values. Now, we can't change the world by ourselves. We can't all be Greta Thunberg, but we can change the communities that we live in, both the physical ones and the digital ones, just by small acts of kindness and by, being mentors and leading by example and so on. Or even not even being mentors, I think mentorships go multiple ways. That a mentorship for someone who is more experienced and a mentee who is less experienced, the mentor has as much to gain from it as the mentee. So why am I mentioning this, and what has this got to do with creativity? It feels very left field. But as it turns out, people who are stressed, exploited, and abused actually don't output their best work. And certainly, they're not able to sustain productivity or creativity for very long without getting burnt out, disillusioned, and physically and mentally unwell. I know I'm preaching to the choir here. I'm sure this hits home for a lot of you. People who are supported and work in a positive environment, however, not only produce better work, but are less susceptible to burnout and depression too. It isn't rocket science, and nor should it be a hard concept to grasp. And with extensive evidence to prove this, there's absolutely no excuse for exploitation or encouraging toxic workplaces, which I've heard time and time again, that people say, but the product will be better if everybody is arrogant and, if we have a really horrible workplace, but, people will just keep their heads down. And it's just not true. Absolutely not true. It's the whole thing of correlation versus causation. Just because your game did well does not mean that it did well because you were mistreating people and being horrible. Anyway, another great reason for adopting kindness and empathy into your creative life is that the world that we live in is one where people want to work with other like-minded people who they enjoy working with and they look forward to being around. I think everybody here can agree that they would prefer to work with people who are kind and empathetic rather than unkind, unempathetic, and unwilling to change. So by choosing to be kind and empathetic and keeping an open mind, people will want to connect with you and want to work with you for being exactly those things. Now, again, this shouldn't be your main motivating factor, but presenting yourself as authentically kind and empathetic at events, online, and just generally every day in your life can open far more doors than being stubborn and salty or selfish and unsympathetic, or my favorite one, a single-minded, self-centered son of a snake oil salesman. Had a really good time with the alliteration on those. I got carried away, but I enjoyed it and it was worth it. Checking the chat again. There's a lot of angry fan content out there, and I definitely want to be among the positive and kind crew of this actors. Of creators. I read that in a really dire voice or morose voice, but actually that was a really wholesome statement, John. Thank you. Yes, I'm calling you specifically out, Jonas. Nah, we're all good. So, if your true self is angry, Maxim, there's this perfect example that I thought of, where I went to Amaze Berlin and there was this person who made games, and their goal in life was to make content that made people feel exclusively negative things. And it's so counterintuitive, but I both hated it from a personal level, who strives to do the opposite of that. But on the other hand, I just have so much respect for this person for just like sticking to their guns and like pursuing something wholeheartedly, because I guess that's what brought them joy in life. That was their passion. And yeah, so good for them. Anyway, we were talking about not so nice people. And unfortunately, there are a fair few of those around, and a good few whose work precedes them, which enables them to keep on getting hired. But certainly from the conversations that I've had and overheard, people who work with these not so nice people, these sons of snake oil salesmen, they don't always have the best time working with them. I mean, I've certainly had experiences with such people. And sometimes it just ends up leading to choosing not to work with them again. But then they move on and their work precedes them, and people hire them to do, to win them another BAFTA or whatever the hell, keep on making good work and then just churning through the cycle, but, leaving kind of death and decay in its wake, or rather people who leave companies because they've had enough of working with not so nice people. But on the flip side, imagine, if you will, getting a handful of repeat clients or jobs, not due to just your work being good and authentic to you, but not necessarily the best in the industry, but simply for the fact that you love working, or like people love working with you, and you present yourself as professional, honest, kind, and empathetic. Probably some of the highest virtues I hold for when I'm measuring other people that I want to work with, and myself. But this is something that I would call a far more sustainable career than what I mentioned previously about being really good or a savant. And it's something that's far more achievable by far more of us than just those who are such auteurs or savants, who are just the leading experts in their field, and they can somehow afford or even justify to be, let's face it, assholes who are just horrible people. And when word of mouth is the best marketing tool, objectively, everybody will tell you, like, word of mouth is the easiest thing to get people to hire you or to buy your product or, become friends with. I don't know. It's easy to imagine that in the same way that people will spread word of the horrid and unethical practices and things that you do, and the companies that are doing all of these horrible things, they'll do the same about people that they like as well. They'll tell other people that you're a lovely person to work with, and oh, you know what, I worked with this person and I'd highly recommend them for this next job. And this leads to potentially more work and an even more sustainable career down the line. And when you're too busy and full up in terms of the work that you have, try passing on the opportunities that come your way to deserving people who are more in need than you are, rather than just taking on the workload yourself because you don't want to turn down any work. And if you are turning down that work, just try offering something other than, nah, can't do it, see ya. Connecting other people together and passing on work, in my personal experience, has yielded some of the best results in terms of growing my community and my network. And it's resulted in far more work for me in the long run without being intentional. But it's essentially created this like more sustainable and supported career by the network and the community that I'm in and that I partake in and that I feel like I contribute to, I hope. And in turn, this has enabled me to be less stressed and subjected to burnout, and ultimately enable me to rediscover my own authentic, freaky passions and tastes, and go back to filling my creative tank so that I can be more creative on demand. It was a bit touch and go there, but we managed to bring it back to the title so that I could justify calling it this. But yes, here we are. We are in the conclusion phase. My partner will love this. I think she's watching. And yeah, she knows that I love to conclude stuff. So this is my favorite section. Just going to check in the chat. Terry Wellman, thank you for being an awesome and very thank you for an awesome and very informative session, John. Having a therapist for a life partner has taught me many of the concepts you are presenting here. Great program. Oh, thank you, Terry. That is wonderful. It's very nice to know that I'm contributing something of value here. And honestly, I've said this in the Goblins of Game audio panel that I did earlier, well, last week. Yeah, like, if you can go to therapy, even if you don't think it's bad enough to have to go to therapy, I would highly encourage it, because there's a lot to learn from being introspective and sort of dealing with your demons. And yeah, and it's not just for you, it's for the people around you as well. I can wholeheartedly say that after the the things that drove me to go to therapy, after the journey that I went on from there, the people around me have been so much more I almost said blessed by my presence, but that's not true. They've benefited from me being a better person to be able to give back more to them, rather than me just being kind of like riddled in my own cacophonous thoughts. I think that's a word. So yeah, right. Let's get this concluding done. So the points that I'd really like you to take away from this talk are: be yourself, wholly. Oh no, I'm not on the right tab. Where do we go? Sorry about that. Be yourself wholly and unashamedly. You may even find your kin if you haven't already. Aim to focus on the things that bring you the most joy within reason. And try not to get distracted by all the things that you think you should be doing, and just trust your gut every once in a while that good things will come from presenting yourself as the person who likes to be doing what you actually like to do. Steal like an artist and take away steal like an artist and take from lots of different sources. Your voice will naturally evolve from there. And practice being genuinely kind and empathetic, and watch the world around you become a better place, not just for yourself, but for all of those around you. So I hope you've taken away at least one, if not two, if not all of these things. But when I said that it was the final section, I lied. I'm continuing this tradition of giving out homework at the end of my talks, because I feel like, it's all very well to watch a talk for an hour and, vibe and post GIFs in the chat, which I very much appreciate. But I feel like there is a journey that happens after this as well. So even if you do one or two of these things, or hell, if you do all of them, I feel like you're going to take away something good from this, and you're going to learn and grow. And again, not just for yourself, but you'll grow for other people around you as well. And I think that that's great, because your creativity and your craft does help people. Sure, we are not doctors and we are not saving lives, but the people who I talk to who are doctors, they say, when I'm saving lives, that's hella stressful. So when I come home and play games, that's literally saving my life. So think about that. Now, number one, ask yourself, what inspires you? What do you find interesting? And what do you enjoy? Be honest with yourself, Number two, create something that is unashamedly you. It doesn't matter if it will lead to work or not, and you don't have to add it to your portfolio or even share it on social media. Try instead sharing it with your partner or your friends or your parents or even your pets. The point is to practice authenticity with yourself first and foremost. Number three, lean on your influences and your inspirations, and create something taking 2 or 3 things that you're passionate about and imagine them being smushed together. I've written some prompt ideas here. Write a piece of music as if Metal Gear Solid was made in the style of a Mario game. Or redesign a scene from Dune as if it was a 90s sitcom. Or my favorite, dub a scene from Aliens as if the air they were breathing was helium. I think that would be especially funny. Number 4, read the works of Austin Kleon. Steal like an artist, show your work, and keep going. Now, Greg was the one who recommended this to me, and I can't be any more grateful for it, because it really kind of started this journey, and it's what sort of inspired this talk, among a couple of other books. But there's a lot of gold here as a creative to really get over these hurdles that we put up in our minds. So highly recommend that. Number 5, perform more acts of kindness in your community. Go out of your way to ask other people how they're doing at the next event you go to, and take an interest in what they say wholeheartedly. Give somebody a helping hand if they're in need, or become a mentor for somebody. Number 6, send a job listing to somebody you know who is in need of work, who would be well suited for a job. Or better yet, if you know the people hiring, give them a recommendation of such a person. And number 7, be authentically creative. Be your freaky self who is honest to yourself and everyone around you. Be curious and playful and decide for yourself what your tastes are and fully embrace them. I mean, you're the only person who's going to know what you like. Nobody else is going to know more than you. Anyway, that's all from me and from Bob Ross. See you next week. But before then, a lot of cliffhangers. Any questions? Cool. I'm going to make a start on these questions. Yes, Lewis B. Greg has these in his background on his videos. Who's saying pizzas on pineapple? What if I like pineapple on pizzas? Doesn't that make me authentic and genuine? Asking for a friend. It absolutely does. Screw the haters, man. I'll share my talk as well if people want, or like I'll share the slides if people want. I don't know how much value there is in that, but they're also all recorded, so that's that's there. So let's go with a couple of questions. La 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 la. I'm gonna spotlight this one. It's a big one. So by developing a creative process that allows skills to develop across a broad range of audio concepts, with time, you will start to see where your talents and interests lie. What advice would you give to someone that is struggling to let their desire to become a designer is in a specific field and go pursue a diverse career plan? It's interesting. I can only really answer this by saying that I have a lot of passions and I'm a generalist. And I look back to when I was a teenager and I used to play guitar. And I thought, well, I used to have all the time in the world to play guitar. And I got pretty good. I went to university and played guitar at university and then became a composer and started playing guitar for that as well. But the thing is, as life goes on, more things pile up. And nowadays, I have to juggle a lot of things. I don't have my mum around to just do my laundry and cook for me and do all of these things. So that immediately drastically reduces the amount of time that I can pursue all the passions that I have. And there are also other passions that I've picked up along the way. While I was working at Supergonk and before then, I was learning to program. I did a lot of freelancing as a game designer for a while. And I mean, in fact, actually, I still do. I'm a sound designer. I'm a technical sound designer. I'm a programmer. I'm a game designer. The only thing that I don't do in games is art. I still do music as well. And the thing that I'm realizing is that there are just too many passions. So I want to, practice and learn more piano, and I want to pick up every instrument under the sun and all that sort of stuff. But there is a limited time that we have on Earth, and we have to just selectively pick the things that we want to do most. So if you're struggling with like the desire of like becoming a designer, then I would say that other things are going to have to take the hit on that. Like other things are going to have to be moved aside and dropped so that you can pursue something like that. Otherwise, I've talked about this in my generalist talk, a T-shaped skill set will become just a flat line. And what I mean by that is that you just end up have like very shallow knowledge in a lot of fields, but you never really go deep in any of those fields. And I would say that rather than having a T-shaped skill set, I actually have like a triangle skill set. And that's totally fine. I'm able to make a career out of that, and that's fine. But I think you have to ask yourself, is that like, it depends on where you want to be, where you want to be looking for work, where you want your career to go. Because I really enjoy having a very holistic view of the games that I make. I really enjoy being able to program stuff if I want to. I very much enjoy being able to like put in music systems for the composers that I work with. And I enjoy being able to implement all of my own audio by myself. I mean, I've usually been a solo audio person as well. So that's I guess it was kind of my choice. Whether I actively chose it or not, I don't know. But I can say that it does work. And you just have to find what works for you. But if you want to be an asset creator and you just want to design cool, badass assets that somebody else implements into a game or a film or whatever, that is also a totally viable career choice. And it's possible to do that. So you kind of just have to assess what you want out of your own career. I hope that helps. I think I answered the question. If not, don't hate me. Next question is by Lewis Ball. Thanks for the talk, Jon. You have made a lot of quotes throughout this talk. Are there any books you would recommend for further reading? I think this was probably before I mentioned Austin Kleon and all of his books. But I would also say that some of the books that have really helped me recently, I went on a journey about mindfulness. There's a book called What Happens in Mindfulness. I can't remember the author, but I can find it for you. But it's called What Happens in Mindfulness. And it talks about being mindful and being present, and that you don't have to be a Buddhist monk in the modern age to still be able to benefit and practice from mindfulness. So I'd say that that's definitely a good one. But one that I read recently that was recommended by my therapist was 4,000 Weeks. And the idea of 4,000 weeks is that 4,000 weeks is roughly the human lifespan. It's about 80 years, or it is 80 years. And it talks about a lot of very interesting concepts about how we deal with time. And I've also started reading The Long View. Greg, you can correct me on this. And it covers the same sort of topics of how our relationship with time is actually quite not helpful for our creativity, because we're constantly feeling like there's not enough time to actually sit down and enjoy the things that we want to enjoy. And by having less stress and less pressure about the fact that we're not going to achieve all of the things that we want to achieve in our lives, you can then actually sit down and focus on the things that you want to choose to do. And you can't choose everything because there isn't enough time. But we can choose to pursue the things that we really do enjoy, and we can choose to also sit down and assess all of that stuff. So highly recommend those books. I'm sure there are other people who can recommend some good books. So if you know any good books, please put them down in the chat, or later on I can make a post about it and just ask people to post their books. The Long View, yes, by Richard Fisher. Thanks, Greg. Right, let's get another question up. So from Eli, hey, lots of great points in this talk. I personally find it hard to have a good work-life balance sometimes in this industry. How do you balance filling your creative tank with the hustle culture of freelancing? Damn, great question. It's tough. Now, funny enough, I think it was in 4,000 Weeks that I was reading that like work-life balance isn't actually a thing. Like, there is no work-life balance. There is only you go to work and you do all the other things, and there are 24 hours in the day, and you sort of choose to do that. I can't really put it into words the way that they did, but it's a very interesting concept that was quite like confronting in my own brain. But essentially, the way that I learned to create a work-life balance is that I learned that I don't want to be exploited by the companies that I work for, because I am a freelancer, but I tend to work the sort of like 40-hour weeks and take my 1-hour lunch break and go for a walk and do all that sort of stuff. But certainly later on in my career, after about sort of 4 or 5 years, I realized that I was just burning myself out. I also got burnt out recently, so like even nearly 10 years in, like it still happens. But I find that you have to be quite strict to begin with to create a habit. And the habit for me that was most valuable was saying that I work 40 hours a week. And if I work any more than that, then I take toil. So if I work 2 hours extra on a Monday, I will take off 2 hours extra on a Friday. That is just the way that I work. And I'm not going to be doing extra because I am not getting paid for it. So that's definitely one of the things that really helps me. But the problem is, I then also spend time doing talks like this. I then also spend time participating on Air Wiggles and supporting my friends Greg and Lewis and everybody else in the team, Lewis and Sergio and Johnny. So like being very active in your career, you do have to hustle a little bit. You have to push yourself forwards and you constantly have to learn and grow. But this kind of comes back to the thing of, if you're pursuing the things that you find interesting and you really enjoy, then it isn't as draining as it isn't as draining as if you're going to university and you're having to do a bunch of exams and all that sort of stuff while you're trying to do a day job, which I have done and I do not recommend it, but sometimes you just have to. So I find that doing stuff like that really helps. I also find that going for a walk at lunchtime every day, and hopefully in the summer when it's not raining in Wales, you can go out for a walk and just like get a breath of fresh air and see the sights. My partner does a lot of stuff with like green prescribing and nature and well-being. And one of the things that we practice is we do the pause, notice, reflect, I think is what it's called. And you'll see that in like National Trust sites and stuff like that. And it says, just stop, take a breath, notice something, and then reflect on it. See how it feels. I see a tree and it's green and the water has just sort of dripped down it. And I really like that because the water makes me feel kind of cozy. It makes me feel that even trees get wet as well. So, and they maybe, do trees get cold? I don't know. They probably do. But you really want to just sort of like take time away from all of your thinking about, oh my God, I need to upload my next showreel and I need to do all of these other things. So, yeah. It all comes back to birds. Yeah, listen to the birds. And like getting older, I suddenly realized that like I get it why people go bird watching and find fun in like knowing different types of bird song and knowing like being able to identify loads of birds. And I think that only comes from just the natural decline of energy and passion and stuff. No, not passion. Like the natural decline of like, not just being constantly geared up all the time and wanting to go out and wanting to become the best, like every day needs to be a Rocky montage. Like actually stopping and noticing and reflecting really, as I said, it sort of just fills your creative juices. And then what I realize is that like actually as time goes on, you realize that you don't have to put in as much time. What you can do is you can actually be more focused and you can be more purposeful with the things that you actually choose to do. And you can say, okay, well, today I'm going to work on my showreel. Today I'm going to work on a project, or today I'm going to work on my talk. Schedule it in your calendar, set a time, you do that time, and then you move on with your life. And you do everything that's outside of that. And sure, you might think about it when you're like sleeping and whatever, but that's kind of inevitable. But it is also worth practicing things like mindfulness and yoga and all that sort of stuff. So just like try and get your brain away from it. Also, exercise, really, really good. Our brains, if we're not spending the energy on exercise, our brains will use up that energy, and that causes anxiety and stress. And it will age you. It will make you ill. It's not great. Spend all of that energy, spend all of those carbs and all of the energy that you ingest, and spend it on things so that you can feel more tired in the evenings and not just like be cause yourself like inner turmoil for for no real reason. So I hope that helps, Eli. Let's go to more questions. Too many buttons. We're on our last question. How would you address the feeling of, I kind of want to vibe with them and active in there, but my lack of experience and knowledge makes me makes me unable to really share anything or start a discussion with them because it's already common knowledge. So I have a really, really good anecdote for this. I started my career when I was working in a burrito shop, like an independent burrito shop. And I was like, I'm tired of this. I wanna make games. And turns out I was in Guildford, the Hollywood of video games, and there was a co-working space that was focused basically on tech and video games. So I was like, oh damn, hell yeah, I'm going to go there and I'm going to become a video game developer. And as it turned out, there were actually very few game studios there, but there were a few people that I was able to chat to. Turns out there were some people who made some very, very cool video games like Magic Carpet, Populous, and like ex Bullfrog, ex Lionhead developers there. And obviously, I mean, I don't tend to put people up on pedestals. So I was just sort of like, oh, yeah, cool. These games, there were people who made these games and these are those people. That's nice. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go and sit in on the conversations that they're having in the kitchen, because that's where all the water cooler conversations about AI and, game development and coding architecture and all that sort of stuff was happening. Now, I'd never coded a line of code in my life apart from, I guess, Excel, but that doesn't count. And these people were just speaking a completely different language to me. And that is, very intimidating. But the thing is, like, I sat there and embraced the fact that I was a novice and didn't pretend to be anything more than, I'm just here. I'm a sound guy. Like, I don't really know what you're talking about. Fast forward like 3 years later, I'd been at that place for 3 years and I'd been actively learning how to code and like asking people for help. And like, I guess that's it. It's like being vulnerable and letting people know where I'm actually at. And there was like this very sobering kind of like lucid moment that I had when I was sitting in on a conversation 3 years down the line, actually able to understand and participate in the conversations that they were having, and actually be able to contribute something of value to those people and to that conversation. And I think that, like, there's this idea of adopting the mentality of a novice that really goes a long way, and not going and pretending and acting like you know everything, because that's just not productive. Like, I think that it's very good to ask questions. And I always say to people who are at earlier stages in their career that if you don't ask questions, or like, the only questions are not asking, the only bad questions are not asking any questions. God damn, I butchered that. So not asking any questions is the only wrong answer, basically, or the wrong questions. If you ask me something like, I don't understand how linear interpolations work, then I'll tell you, I'll sit you down and I'll be like, okay, well, this is how linear interpolations work, or this is how, I don't know, sub-frequencies work and whatever, who knows, like this is how phasing works. And I will sit down and explain that to you. I'm not going to go, oh my God, you don't know what phasing is. Like that's crazy. Get out of my sight until you come back and learn how it works. And I think that a lot of people, if you're honest and open about that, people will be quite nice about it, especially in game audio. I can't talk about everywhere, but I think that not coming in and trying to steal the conversation and actively like stopping and listening to what people have to say, and also keeping an open mind that what people say isn't the objective truth, that that like you have a lot to gain from that and you have a lot to learn from it. So I would say, do it, try it, fail. I've definitely been in situations where I've failed at the conversation, where I've come in being like, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Linear interpolations, sure. Like, but the only way that you can get over this is by actually just doing it and just confronting that fear of doing it. And if you fail, like I said before, try it a second time and then try it again and see what you're doing wrong, if you are doing anything wrong. But chances are in the games industry, people are very nice and they will want to like encourage you and accept you and help you learn and grow. So I hope that answers your question. Right. So that's it for all of the questions. I hope you have all had a wonderful time. And yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this journey of wholesome vibes. From the chat that I've been able to see, people have been really enjoying this and taking stuff away. So if you ever want to reach out and chat about wholesome things, or chat about games or audio or just life, or what, recommend how to look for a good therapist, then yeah, please reach out on my socials or on Airwiggles. And yeah, I'd very much enjoy speaking to you wonderful people, or your freaks and your goblins of game audio. So yeah, I see this, Rhina. I think game audio people are some of the most Oh no, the chat keeps on going. The most welcoming people ever. They're never gatekeeping any knowledge for themselves and are super helpful for newcomers. I couldn't agree more, Rona. That's great. So thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Love you all. And yeah, see you in the real world on Saturday for some of you who are going to the going to the live event, the live closing event in London. So cool. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Goodbye.